The resettlement wing in Dartmoor prison was a place where I spent a lot of time. When I think back to my sort of good times in prison, my times on the resettlement wing are when I think back to. It's the time when I kind of peaked as a prisoner. I kind of had the best time, weirdly, and the rest of it kind of blurs into one. Different sentences, different jails, but it's all the same kind of same shit stuck behind your door. But the resettlement wing was something completely different. I've touched on it obviously in a few different stories in my diary podcast and the Dartmoor podcast. So one of my good friends actually stumbled across me and has found me, even though I do these stories anonymously. It has managed to get back to me. So he listens to these stories in his big digger. So he asked me if I would do something about the resettlement wing in a bit more detail because we were down on that wing together at the same time. Here we go. So the resettlement wing is a Category D prison. A Category D wing within a Category C prison. It's quite unusual in that respect. Normally, obviously, each prison has its own category. They don't tend to kind of have half and half. You might have a Super A cat within an A cat prison, but you don't tend to have a D cat within a C cat. It is quite unusual in that sense. There may be more around the country, but I don't know personally of any others. The resettlement wing was the old punishment block. It used to house, all the worst of Dartmoor. People have died down there before, and it is pretty gruesome. But it got turned around. It became the resettlement wing. It's a 2-story building with about 40 cells on there. It's completely isolated. So obviously, because it's a C-Cat prison, we weren't allowed to mix with the rest of the prison. So once you're down there, you kind of stay down there. You have your own gym sessions. You are just kept separate from the rest of the prison. So we had our own little library down there. We had our own gym. We had our own showers. It was only a small gym, sort of multi-gym sort of thing, but it was enough. It was enough to sort of keep you going between sessions. It was a place that had a real mixed bag of people down there. So you'd get some people who were down there for sort of, it was their first offence and they were just starting to go off the rails maybe. Or people like myself who'd been in and out of prison multiple times, and I was starting to get down that kind of pathway of this being a way of life. So it was, a real mixed bag of people down there from all sort of walks of life. It tended to kind of cater for the southwest criminals, but again there were some people from up north who were there because it was a great stepping stone to get in your DCAT as well. It was basically a pathway, so they either kicked you off the wing or they sent you to a DCAT basically. So it was good for other prisoners who weren't from the southwest as well to kind of get their DCAT in a nice easy fashion and then fly back up north to go to a Cat D prison in their local area. The cells and the wing was a lot softer. The minute you come through the door, you notice that there's carpet everywhere, which isn't the case. There's a fish tank on the side. You've got big sofas, leather sofas. There's about 6 or 7 leather sofas just scattered around so you could have a sit on. There was a couple of pool tables, which isn't unusual, but these pool tables were, quite well kept. There was a ping pong table. And like I say, we had a little multi-gym down there with a few, weights and chin-up bar and things like that as well, some running machines and things. You weren't able to use any of the sort of those entertainment equipment unless it was like lunchtime or the weekend or kind of after 6 o'clock, that sort of thing. So the whole point of being on this wing really was that you were knuckling down, you were doing courses, you were kind of filling your spare time with everything productive that you could do to kind of, again, show that you were worthy of getting a DCAT and that you were working hard to kind of get out of the prison. Now, like I say, the only reason I heard about the resettlement wing was because one of my friends who I worked with on the carpentry shop had just gone down there, and I'd never heard of it before, but it did seem like a real appealing thing. And again, I was looking at my second parole sentence. I didn't think I was going to get my parole because I'd broken every bit of trust I'd ever been given. So this resettlement wing, if I could get, fill my prison CV sort of thing with everything from the resettlement wing, then I could either try and get out to a DCAT or, failing that, it might help me towards my parole. So, like I say, the cells were a lot softer. You had soft furnishings in your cell. The cells are actually a bit bigger than they are on the main wing as well. And it was just a much more relaxed environment. There was still, I only really knew one or two people down there, but then that wasn't unusual. I'd been to, prisons, being the only person on my own before. I'd been to new wings before. I didn't know anyone on the wing, so not knowing anybody in this small environment wasn't too bad really. But even so, people kept sticking their head in through the door and sort of saying hello and things, because they only really take on, maybe one or two new prisoners every fortnight or so, because there was always a kind of turnover of either people going home, getting shipped out, or getting kicked off the wing. So, maybe 2 or 3 new prisoners a month would join the wing. So, yeah, it wasn't unusual, but it was still unusual enough that people would be sticking their head in to say hello and where I'd come from and all that. When each morning you would see like half the wing just disappear off the wing and go outside, because it was a resettlement wing. A lot of lads had worked their way through their courses and everything, and they were actually going out onto the prison farm. Dartmoor has a farm right next door to the just over the walls. It used to be a working farm, so they'd have fucking fields full of cows, and each day they'd be milking the cows. They'd have a massive milking parlour, and the boys would go out there. There'd be about 100 or so lads would go out onto the farm. They would milk all the cows and everything, and they would even have bulls and things that would go for shows and stuff like this. And the prison farm used to literally go on for as far as the eye could see. It would go out to the horizon, and there was like so much stuff that lads could do. But the Ministry of it's not Ministry of Defence, is it? What am I talking about? The Home Office decided to stop all these kind of working farms, and either that or, and I think it coincided with Prince Charlie putting the rent up on the estate as well, meant that the prison could no longer run the farm. So it was just used as a training farm now. So you'd basically go over the wall, and they'd be having they teach you how to drive tractors, drive plant machinery, all that kind of thing. But yeah, there'd still be about 20 lads going off the wing each day, either out on the farm or would go out to a placement somewhere in the community. So I was watching these lads go out, and I was just thinking, yeah, this was for me. I don't mind, because I've done so many. I've done Portland, I've done Exeter, I've done Guy's Marsh, I've done a sentence at Dartmoor now. I'm not seeing anything being offered to me that was as good as this. So I really thought that I was going to knuckle down and make the most of this. The staff would talk to you a bit more like adults down there. You'd have a personal officer who would actually know you inside out. They'd have a chat with you. They'd know all about your offences and things like this, and what you were trying to get from the wing, basically. Now for me, it was that I'd basically run myself into the ground. My family didn't want anything to do with me. I kept coming in. I kept telling people I was going to stay out, and then within a few weeks, days, months, I was back in prison again. And so, yeah, basically everyone had just given up on me, and I'd almost given up on myself as well. So this was a chance for me to start, putting some feathers in my cap that were positive, and also start building some family ties again. So that's what my personal officer helped me do. So not only did they, the whole journey from the, when you get onto the resettlement wing to get into a DCAT is a tick box exercise for them. They literally know the path. They know that you know what you have to do. So your personal officer goes through all that with you, and just says, look, you've got to do this, you've got to do this, you've got to do this. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere. And also on a sort of personal level, he got me speaking to my parents again, my mum again, and my family, and just started opening up that little bit of communication that I just hadn't had for a long time. So you've got to give it to the staff on the wing. There were a bunch of them that weren't so good, but I just happened to have. I'll shout him out as well. His name was Ivan Judd, great guy. Steve Allam as well was the senior officer on the wing. I'll never forget them. Those two actually gave a shit about me, and did everything they could, from their side to try and get me back on the straight and narrow. But as always, I was looking at everything from the eyes of a criminal and a crook, and just seeing how I could make the most out of it, really, from my sense. So, like I say, the staff would talk to you a bit more like adults, and even, a bit like a parent sometimes, a bit of a male role model in your life that a lot of people don't have. They gave you the kick up the arse you needed it when you needed it as well, because I've talked in other stories about how, as a prisoner, you try and spend as much time sleeping as you can, just so you can pass the time, and, sitting there watching telly. You always hear about, lags kind of sitting there playing their PlayStations and watching telly and sleeping all day. So they don't want that on the resettlement wing. You're not allowed to switch telly on during the core day. You certainly can't be sat there, just playing computer games and things. You've either got to be reading a book. If you've got nothing else to do, they want you reading a book, or they want you doing some sort of education. You can go and get yourself some Open University stuff while you're on the wing. There's always a course, or there's always something need cleaning as well. Everybody had a cleaning job that you had to do each week. So like rota around, one of you would be mopping and sweeping, another one would be dusting somewhere. The little TV room would need hoovering, all that kind of thing. So everyone would have a job, and everyone would have to be up and doing something. It was just kind of instilling in you responsibility and discipline and hard work, that sort of thing. And that's just something that you don't get throughout the rest of the prison. So again, from the actual prison's point of view, they were doing everything they could. Now, again, this was something I hadn't really experienced before, so I was still pushing back a little bit. I was still trying to sleep whenever I could. I'd watch telly in the afternoon when I shouldn't be, that sort of thing. But I'd just be listening out for the staff. And the staff started to cotton onto this as well. So Steve Allen would hold on to his keys as he was walking towards my cell, and he knew I'd be sitting there watching telly. So yeah, there was a bit of cat and mouse. But again, it was all just it's just trying to break those bad habits out of you. To get you where you wanted to be, which essentially was that decap. So yeah, like I say, if you were stuck on the wing during the day, you had to be doing something. And once every sort of 3 months or so, they'd get you cleaning all those carpets that I mentioned, all through the wing. So you'd literally have to come out. There was no carpet cleaning like Hoover or anything like that. It was scrubbing bushes, soapy water, and then you'd have a Hoover to like suck up the water. But that was about it. So yeah, you'd be on your hands and knees scrubbing, which wasn't fun. Now, bearing in mind, I was on a 4-year sentence. My release on temporary licence, or what they used to call it, rottle date, I think was about 6 months before my parole. So my parole would have been at the 2-year mark out of that 4-year sentence. So I think my rottle date was 18 months. Now, bearing in mind, I'd gone down to Dartmoor straight away. I think I was on the resettlement wing within about 4 months of me being in prison. So I had a good, at least 14 months on the wing before I could be released out onto the farm. So, if they're scrubbing these carpets every 3 months, I did it about 4 or 5 times before they said to me that, I didn't need to do it anymore. So, yeah, I definitely grafted and jumped all through the hoops that they fucking set for me. So, lots of people drop off this wing just because of the regime. A lot of people can't hack being told what to do, or just won't, scrub carpets and clean, that sort of thing. So they just tell them to stick it up their arse, and they walk off the wing. They get caught with, small amounts of drugs, that sort of thing, positive piss tests. Once you start going outside of the wing and outside of the prison, you'll get piss tested every week. So, most drugs will be, if you're taking them regularly, will be still in your system after 7 days. So a lot of people would get caught with cannabis, things like this, and they just weren't able to put in the long work that was needed to get out. So they ended up falling and getting off the wing. Not only that, not only getting kicked off the wing, but they'd also end up at their decats, or like I say, just getting out. A lot of people would end up just getting out, and they just liked doing the the easier time down on the resettlement wing, not necessarily wanting a decat at all. One of the lads on the wing, we nicknamed him Chinhead because he was completely bald and his forehead looked a bit like a chin. I remember him. He was one of the people that I recognised was a bit like me in my future. So if I didn't pull my finger out, I was going to end up being like him. He'd done about 9 years consecutively, with back-to-back sentences, similar to me, 2 or 3 years in at a time. And it doesn't take long until it starts accumulating up. And before you know it, like him, he'd done 9 years inside with only a few weeks out over this whole time. And I always remember, distinctively working towards getting out so I could just be not like him. I wanted to get out this time and just break that cycle of coming in and out of prison so much, so I just didn't end up like that guy. Being on the wing for a long time, like I said, I had to do about 14 months on the wing before I could get out, just for sort of assessments and work towards my rottle date. Just meant that I had longer to do more courses. So I ended up doing a plumbing MVQ. I remember I did an industrial cleaning course, then all the sort of offending behaviour, drugs awareness courses, all that sort of thing. So there was very rarely a time when I was like sat on the wing doing nothing. Like I say, there was a real there was a real need to fill like this prison CV. You had to go in front of a board before you could get out, and you had to basically sit here and said, look, in 14 months I've done this, 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 and this, and this. And if you can just show them that you haven't sat on your ass and you haven't done, nothing, and then you really worked for it. And especially that's what I needed to do as well. I needed to really work for it to show them that I could fucking be trusted and get this out. So, not only that, sort of doing the courses and stuff, but there was also other things they'd put on. Now, bearing in mind, we can't mix with the rest of the prison, so we're quite limited as to what things they can do for us. Now, like I say, we'd have to keep going to the gym on our own. There'd just be like 5 or 6 of us down the gym. Yeah, because bearing in mind, there's only 20 people on the wing normally, because everyone's outside, and only about, a quarter of us wanted to go down the gym sometimes, so there'd only be a handful of us going down the gym. So when it came to like the Christmas competitions and things like this, or weightlifting competitions, I was really into my weight training, along with a bunch of others. And I remember one year when I first went down there, Christmas rolled around, and the only way I would be able to enter any of the weightlifting competitions was if I went down there with the sex offenders. Now, this I have had to sort of mix with sex offenders sort of later on when I was a gym orderly, but at this point was the first time I'd really ever had any contact with them, or had to share the same space with them. But like I say, I was into my gym. I just wanted to go down there, lift my weight, and then leave again. So I didn't actually have to like share showers with them or anything like this. I wasn't sort of using the equipment with them, but I would have to share the same room as them, and that didn't sit well with me. But I went down there to go and do it. I did an Ironman competition where I'd have to be running around the gym yard for God knows how long, and then rowing for God knows how long, and instead of swimming, because there's no swimming pool, we had to do a rock climb. So I had to climb for like 20 minutes or half an hour or something like this, which was really, really hard as well. But I had to do it down there while the nonces were having their gym session. And I remember someone walking past and saying, later on, I saw them another time, and they were like, "What the fuck are you doing in there with the nonces?" And I was just like, I know, it was a competition. I had to do it there with them. But one day they came to us, and there was opportunity to do some yoga, and I'd never done yoga before, and I thought it would be a good chance to get off the wing, because a lot of the time when you aren't doing courses, you're still bored, so just going and doing some yoga I thought would be a good chance to get off the wing and do something a bit different. But again, the gym staff were like, if you come, you will have to share the session with nonces, blah blah blah. You won't be teamed up with them, but you will be in the room with them. I was like, okay. There was about 7 of us, and the gym staff assured us there'd be about 5 of them. So it wasn't going to be too much. We probably would be able to just keep ourselves to ourselves. We walked around. We went round to where the old church was, the old prison church, and in there they've got a big room that they use for stuff. And I'm the first one in through the door, and far from being just like 5 sex offenders in there, there's about 30 of the bastards. And they all look up as soon as I walk in, and I'm like, oh, fucking hell. They fill about 2/3 of the room. There's very little space to do anything else other than that. So I'm like, oh, God, what am I going to do here? So, I carry on in the room, and I go and take a seat down next to the instructor. And then I look round for my pals to kind of see, what their reaction is. And I'm on my own. The prison gate is then shut behind where I've just come in. And unbeknownst to me, I've walked in, and my pals have just taken a look at it and just turned off and walked. They haven't even come in. Didn't tell me to stop. Didn't grab me. They've just turned around and fucked off. So suddenly now I find myself in the old church in Dartmoor with a room full of sex offenders, and this little hippie yoga bird in front of me, just kind of like giving her little speech. Now she's gone straight into her speech, and I'm sitting there burning up inside. I don't. Every instinct of me doesn't want to be in the room with these people. I was only here to do a bit of yoga with my pals to pass the time, and now suddenly it's me, I'm just lost in there with these guys, and my pals have ditched me, and I didn't know what I'm doing. So as soon as she's finished her little speech, she talks for about 10 or 15 minutes, just like non-stop, and I didn't want to be rude and kind of just jump up and tell her I didn't want to be there. So there was a member of staff just sort of stood over by the side. So as soon as she finished her little speech, I jumped up, grabbed the member of staff, and asked him to take me back to the wing. And he did it, and he was just laughing his ass off at me. He goes, "You look so uncomfortable in there." He goes, but so I didn't do any more yoga for a bit. Now, again, going back to the personal officer, I've been down on the wing now for a long time. They're doing everything for me. It's all looking great. Every time there's, everything's sort of marked off on the calendar. So anytime there's a little meeting we need or the next step we need to talk about, we're on it. We've got all our reports and everything. You get reports from the outside, so they'll always ask the police, what their assessment is of me and whether they think I should be going out into the community. And they said to me that don't worry, the police always say no. Do you know what I mean? So, but one thing when we were picking up the reports, I noticed the report for my friend was underneath my one. So I just quickly looked at the paperwork, and I could see the police report was on the top. And the police report for him was warning the prison, saying, do not release this guy. He's a violent drug dealer. And when I spoke to my friend about this, he said that, I've been caught for violence before, but I've never been caught for dealing drugs. And that's the kind of thing that the police will be able to say in the background, without a criminal record conviction. They can just pass this intelligence around on you without your knowledge, and it's stated as fact, when in reality, surely only your convictions should be passed around and stated as fact like this. But yeah, I didn't know what they said about me, but it was probably fairly similar. Now the wing was quite cushy, like I say. We got all our own clothes on. You're allowed to just buy stuff from there. They've got like a little Argos catalogue and a little M&M catalogue that you can order stuff from. So you can be sitting around in your own jeans and t-shirt all day. You can also get stuff brought in from home. So you can't normally get stuff brought in on a visit, but like I say, because we're a DCAT wing in the CCAT prison, what you would be able to do when you first came down to the wing, they would allow you one visit where you're allowed to bring in all your own clothes. You'd have to put in an application like a week before, and you're only allowed to bring in what you've got on that application, like what would it be, like a handful of t-shirts, jumpers, tracksuit bottoms, that sort of thing, pants, socks, just your stuff to kind of make you feel a bit more comfortable. But I remember my mum, just sort of ring me up midweek, telling me that she's booked a visit for the weekend, and then she was going to bring some stuff up for me. So I was like, fucking hell. So I've had to go to my personal officer and just say, listen, my mum's coming up this weekend. I know it's only 2 days away. Is there any chance that we can put in this app now and try and get it cleared? And then when she come up, she didn't bring the clothes up anyway. So it was typical of my mum. But also, it's just annoying when you have to kind of get the staff and get them to do a favour for you, and then it doesn't work out anyway. But that was typical of my mum. But also, that's what the staff were like. They would just bend the rules a little bit for you, as long as you weren't fucking around too much. And that was the good thing about that wing. And that's the only time that I've ever come across that in the prison, that the staff turning a blind eye to things when normally they're normally all over it. So yeah, you used to be able to have clothes, you'd have, films, just a lot of extras really, being on the resettlement wing. It was a real cushy little number. I was getting closer and closer to my rottle date, and I ended up being the number one on the servery. So I was the guy just reading out, people's names and their food choices and stuff like that. It was a cushy little job. The only thing that was difficult was I'd have to push the trolley back up to the kitchens, after fucking meal times. I'd done everything I could to fill up my time. So when my rottle date came around and I was eligible to go out on the farm, I got it, and I was over the moon. This was a real step forward for me. And the very first weekend that came up that I was eligible to go out on the farm, I jumped at it. You start off only going out there on a Saturday and Sunday, and if I think it's not even a whole day. It's only sort of 9 till about 1, I think, and then you come back both days. Again, it's only just over the wall, but it's fucking. It might as well be freedom. You get to walk around. You've got a couple of farmers. They're still prison staff, but they're a couple of old boys who spend their day outside of the establishment. So they're not they're not like screws. So it was brilliant, and we could just jump in the back of a tractor, and the farmer would take us off to a field somewhere, and we'd have to go and put a wall back up or do something, herd some cattle every now and then. It was nice and easy. I really enjoyed being out on the farm. I spent luckily enough, my time going out on the farm just coincided with the beginning of summer. So I'd be out there getting a tan and everything. One of the tenant farmers who was in the farm next door, they had a load of sheep. And they would take a few of us out, and we would go and round up all the sheep. They had about 600 sheep, and we'd just go and spend a few days up with them shearing the sheep, and I'd meet all their family and stuff, and like I say, we'd just take a little packed lunch and we'd just go off. It was a few miles away from the farm, from the actual prison itself, but we'd just go out on the back of a tractor or the back of a quad bike and just fuck off over the horizon. It was great fun. It really started to. I really enjoyed, having this kind of work reward kind of structure that they'd have up there. I saw it as a day out of prison, basically. The staff would have to be hustling people some days to get them to go out on the weekend. Because once you've done a few weekends, then you can start going out Monday to Friday as well. And again, like I say, I've done so much time in prison now, and I just saw it as a day out of prison. I didn't care. I was going out as much as I could, just to get myself out of there. We fucked around, as you'd expect. A bunch of young 20-year-olds. As soon as the prison staff would leave us at any opportunity, we'd be fucking around. And there's a bit of a hill that used to go around the prison, so. The road that went from sort of the back, the front to the back of the prison would be on a slope, and we used to there was a trolley that we'd be carrying stuff about and hoofing stuff about in, and if you all sat in it, you could probably fit about 4 people in this trolley, and it looked a bit like one of those like bobsleigh sort of things, and it had a handle on the front, so we'd sit on the front of this trolley and we'd get about 3 or 4 of the lads in, and we'd push ourselves down this hill, and by the end of the hill you'd get up maybe about 10-20 miles an hour. It wasn't massive, but it was faster than any of us had ever been for a while. So yeah, whenever we got a bit of spare time, we'd be off doing our bobsleigh fucking trolley racing and fucking around and things. So yeah, it was just good. It was good to get out of the prison and be around your friends still. Out on the farm, like I say, it was all kind of courses, a lot of plant machinery, learning how to drive tractors, diggers, telescopic handlers, 360 diggers, all that kind of thing. I learned to drive one of those little dump trucks, you see on building site and stuff. And like I say, I think once you've done about 6 weeks out on the farm, you could then apply for your DCAP, which would mean that you were allowed off the prison estate, because the farm was still on the prison estate, essentially. But once you got your DCAP, then you could start, going out and beyond and out to placements and work and things like that. I don't remember if you had to do a town visit first. I think you went out on the farm and I think you had one town visit and then you got your DCAP. Or I don't remember if you had to get the DCAP first and then you got your town visit. I can't remember, but it came around the same time. Now, a town visit is exactly what it sounds like. On a Saturday or a Sunday, you were able to go out with your family from 9 o'clock in the morning to about 6 o'clock at night, I think it was. They'd pick you up, they'd sign you out, and just take you down to Plymouth, really. It was fucking amazing. It was the best thing ever. It started off with my mum coming up, and then as things got better with my girlfriend, who I was starting to see a lot more at the time, she would start to come and get me. But it was only family that could come and get you out, so I'd have to get my little brother to come up with her. He would sign me out, and then he'd just spend an hour or two with me, and then he'd go home, and then I'd spend the rest of the day with my girlfriend. And eventually, the gate staff got so, because I started wanting to see my girlfriend like every weekend or every other weekend, and my little brother didn't want to come up every time, so I'd put him down as the person signing me out. But because I was coming and going so often, the gate staff were being a bit slack, and they would just let me go out with the girlfriend. I'd put them both on the license, and my little brother wouldn't be there half the time, and that kind of got knocked on the head once, because I tried it too many times, and one of the prison staff at the gate kind of noticed that there was no brother there, and it was just a girlfriend. So I remember getting knocked back for one of my town visits, just because I pushed the boundaries a bit too far then. But yeah, now that I was able to go out for a placement, they placed me with my pal, the one who had been working in the carpentry shop and in interest me in coming to the settlement wing. He went out to the forestry and managed to get me out on the forestry as well. So that was great. Now the forestry was a completely different world again. The Forestry Commission basically took care of all the forest land on Dartmoor. So anywhere between Plymouth and Exeter was now my workspace. It was just the best. They'd come and pick us up in a Land Rover, and we would just disappear off to every corner of the moor. Some days we'd be down right on the edge, the Wrigley's factory down by Plymouth, down there, and and you'd see bits of the city. Or other days we'd be deep in the moor, where there wasn't even any roads, for miles around us. It'd be thick with snow sometimes, and it would just be we'd be digging around these kind of ancient medieval sites, and we worked so hard out there, but it was again sunny weather most of the time. We would be again around my pals, so it was a great environment to be, and I just really enjoyed every minute of it. Again, when I think back to prison, I just, it's difficult to explain that we were doing a sentence, but I was spending 8-9 hours a day out just with my pals having a laugh, and we were earning money after a little while as well. So the resettlement wing got some funding. The Forestry Commission got some funding from the lottery, so they were able to pay 4 lads for 5 years. And not only that, but once you got out of prison, they would have like 6 months worth of work for you once you got out as well. So they'd have the funding for that also. So yeah, I jumped at this, and my friend was the first one to get paid, and then I was the second one to get paid. Like, we were the first 2 people to get paid from the resettlement wing. Everybody else was just doing it for work experience. We were the only people actually getting paid at that point. I remember my canteen sheet. Most people's canteen sheet, when it would get pushed under their door on a Saturday or Sunday, would have maybe 20-30 quid on there. If someone was getting some money sent in, they might have about 100 quid. I remember picking my canteen sheet up, and there'd be about 1,300 quid on it. It was just. I remember one of my friends saying that he was struggling to save up for a radio, and I was looked like I was saving up for a car. But yeah, it was. We were definitely doing well. We had just the freedom of being able to go to the shops and things as well. So when we were working a bit closer to Plymouth, we would stop off at the shops and go and get food and pasties and crisps and things, and there was just people around as well. We didn't get to see normal people, just going off to work, or just there's girls hanging about, and just real life. In Princetown, the village that houses Dartmoor, there was a little shop, and you had a little chip shop, and there was a couple of little pubs. Now, obviously, we were told never to go anywhere near the pubs because some prison staff live in the village, and then obviously other staff just go to the fucking go to the pub after work. So it was never ever go anywhere near the pubs, because you weren't allowed to drink alcohol anyway. But we did. We'd go for a beer in Plymouth on a town visit or something. But yeah, we didn't go near the pubs. But the chip shop we'd go and get chips after work. Sometimes the Land Rover would drop us off in the village, and we'd get some chips and walk down, just having a munch. But on Fridays there would be a girl in there, and I remember she had lovely tits, but she had fucking teeth like a broken gearbox. So as long as she didn't smile, she looked great. Now I remember just sort of telling my mates that, this girl was lovely and all this and that, and they dared me to ask her out. Now, bearing in mind, I've been with the same girl. I'm basically like 25, and I've been with only like fucking one girlfriend since I was like fucking 16, 17. So I wasn't a great chat-up artist. And then I've been in prison for all this time as well. So my friends have dared me to ask her out. And just one day we were walking up to the chip shop, and she was just heading out the door for a fag or something. So they dared me to go over and have a talk to her. Now, like I say, I wasn't used to even talking to girls, let alone asking her out. So I went over, and it must have been the worst ever time I've ever talked to a girl. I remember just being like, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And then I basically just froze. She kind of looked at me a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, well, and I said, "Listen, I think you're really nice, and I would love to." And then she kind of just looked at me awkwardly, and then she kind of said something along the lines of, "Oh my God, are you actually doing this?" Which made me just kind of like shit my pants more. And then I kind of just stumbled some more and was just like, "Oh, would you like to go out for would you like to maybe have a drink sometime?" Just like a complete fucking virgin. And she kind of quite sort of kindly told me she's got a boyfriend, but if we was ever in the pub in the village, then I should go over and say hello. And I said I would, next time I was in there, which would be never. And yeah, that was me crashing and burning hard. The only thing that could have been worse is if my friends were actually next to me while I did it. But yeah. So I've got better since. I have a wife now, so I must have chatted at least one girl up successfully. But yeah, that was a kick in the teeth. and by a girl who looked like she'd been kicked in the teeth. Um, I remember fondly actually. One of my happy memories were sitting in the park in Princetown. There's a small little grassy area, eating some chips in the sunshine, and there's like me, 3 or 4 of us just sat there, saying like, we're doing a sentence right now. We're supposed to be in prison right now, but we weren't. We were just fucking laying there in the sun, and it is surreal. And obviously, we were all in there for different offences, and we all, if the families of our victims found out that was what we was doing, they would have been held up. The prison wing, the resettlement wing was always really worried about any stories getting out into the papers. That's why they were so tight on us. They didn't allow us to go out and get chips or to go to the pub or anything like this. We were always told that we were out for the purpose of our license only. So we had to be picked up at the prison. We had to, whether it be town visit or work, we had to be picked up at the prison, go and do what we were supposed to do, and then come back. There was no effing around. There was no going to the shops. There was no, especially when we was out working, we couldn't be going to the shops or anything like this. And even getting dropped off at the chip shop was a no-no. And all that kind of stuff like got tightened up as we took the piss a little bit more. But we were getting paid properly now, me and my friend, and we were starting to put away some decent money. I didn't end up getting my parole. The parole board, I've broken every bit of trust that was ever given to me, so the parole board thought that it would be a good idea for me to spend more time in prison and just get more courses and more kind of work experience under my belt. I was getting driving lessons at the time as well, and when I wasn't out working or anything like that, I was just hanging around on the wing with my mates. Now this was something that was great. So I always look back at it a bit like being in uni. So we were just basically in a dorm, we were basically just living in each other's pockets. When we weren't out working, we were sat in each other's cells, just drinking coffee and hanging around. We were playing computer games a lot. We'd sit around just watching films or playing computer games. We'd, be at the gym together. There was about 6 or 7 of us who were just really tight. A bunch of mad Cornishmen, and just people from all over the southwest. Really, it was a really good little time. I had a little prison shop going. Someone had left, and they were running a shop. And when they left, I just thought, fuck it. I think we bought the remnants of his shop, or we just carried it on. I can't remember. And yeah, we were just making good money from the shop. One of the members of staff, because I was starting to bring stuff in now, right from the very first town visit. I started bringing stuff onto the wing, like games, DVDs, porn, all sorts of stuff. I was smuggling clothes in, speciality items, food, chocolate, all this kind of stuff. And it was getting a bit on top, having to, every time I was going out of the prison, I was having to fucking smuggle something back in. And so I remember there was someone said to me, just like, there's this particular member of staff, because I had a locker up at the gate. I said, when he's on at the weekend and it's quiet, they said, listen, just ask him if he'll go and get it from your locker. And he would normally just bring it back for you, doesn't normally ask any questions. So I was like, okay. So next time he was on, I just said, listen, I've got a couple of DVDs up at my locker. Is there any chance you can bring them down for me? And he did it for me. And bearing in mind, he only does one weekend out of like 4. So the next time, next month, I've got a couple more DVDs. Next month after that, I've put the DVDs in a carrier bag and he's brought them down. Now, in amongst those, there's a few porn things that, I'm selling on, and also some music as well, shoved in the cases of the DVDs. So without him knowing it, he was actually being my mule. And, well, he probably did know it, but he was bringing in more and more stuff for me all the time. Now, we're starting to push the boundaries a lot more. Now, bearing in mind, me coming down to this resettlement wing, when I wanted to go out, I was sat there kind of wide-eyed looking at all the boys going out and stuff, thinking, I wanted to be in their shoes. Now I am in their shoes. I'm absolutely taking the piss. I'm starting to meet my girlfriend after work. On days when there's no work, sometimes I'd be going out and just spending the day with her down at a B&B or something, or just out in town. It wasn't just me. Other members of like other lads that were going out to placements were taking the piss a bit more as well. One of my friends got caught having a beer on his birthday. Another one of my mates got caught. He was going out to work on his family business, and his missus would cook him a dinner, and she'd basically cover it in tin foil and just give him the plate. And he was driving up, and he'd stop about 5-10 minutes down the road before he went back in the prison, and he'd sit there in his car and he'd eat his dinner. And one of the members of staff saw him, from the prison, and they saw him sitting there eating. And again, like I say, they were quite strict on the fact that you you went out for your license and that was it. So there was no sitting around, no sitting around eating your dinner in the car. That was seen again as being out for not the purpose of your license. And we, like I say, there was always a risk that we would bring heat to the wing, because the wing was doing a very crazy thing. It was letting these prisoners out, and and we were going out when there was other lads on the wing who weren't going out. So we were decap prisoners going back to a CCAP, establishment basically. It was a massive risk that the prison was taking, and they didn't want us taking the piss, and we were. My friend got caught taking his phone out onto the farm at Christmas time, like I say, so he could speak to his family and organise some girls coming down. And like I say, we were just pushing the boundaries more and more. Eventually, I got caught bringing my mobile phone into the prison. It was about 3 months before my release date, so I'd done about 19 months on the wing at this point. So I got caught bringing my mobile in. I had like a slit in the lining of my rucksack that was, you couldn't really see it because it was a black rucksack, and I just slit along the lining, and I used to sort of, I'd made myself a little pocket that I could hide my mobile in, and I'd empty out my rucksack so it would just look like an empty bag, so they'd never even really look too much to see. But we'd push the boundaries too much, and me and my pal, we started bringing in alcohol, and that was our fuck up really, because someone had a little party, they didn't invite someone else. We'd given them a bottle of Jack Daniels for their party, and the lad who wasn't invited grassed everybody up. So we ended up, when I did come back in for my search, they gave me a proper search, and they searched all around the lining of my bag, and they found the phone. So I got kicked off the wing. I had something like 3 big black bags full of clothes that I shouldn't have had. Bear in mind, you're supposed to have like 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of jeans and a jumper. And I had 3 bin bags full of clothes that I'd been basically just, going out in prison clothes and coming back in my own stuff. And so they said to me, as long as I didn't kick off too much, they were just going to kick me off the wing, and I could keep my clothes. But if I did kick off, then they would take all my clothes off me and nick me for them as well. So it was a simple solution. Like I say, the when they do these kind of adjudications, so I was going to have to go up in front of the governor now for not only was I kicked off and put back onto the main wing, I was going to have to go up in front of the governor now to talk about the phone. And because I only had 3 months left, the governor it's not a governor anymore, sorry, it's an outside adjudicator. The judge was only going to come in once a month, and I only had 2 more of these hearings left before I got out. So my solicitor, she was a cracker actually. She was quite fit, but she said to me, she goes, "Look, we'll say we haven't had time to prepare for this meeting," and she goes, "Next meeting, I'll just call in sick, so they'll have to adjourn it again, and then you'll be out after that." So that was sound. Nothing happened about the phone, and I got out. The resettlement wing, kind of like I say, it was the time I look back on fondly in prison, weirdly, because it was the time I turned my life around, in the sense that I rebuilt my family life, I rebuilt the life of my girlfriend. I was going out to work, I was going out and having a beer, I was going out and getting laid, I was spending loads of free time with my pals. I built up some friendships in that prison that I still have to this day. People that I know that if I ever needed anything and I just phoned up and said I'm in the shit, then these people would be there for me, and I love and respect them for that, and that would have only come from this wing. So as perverse as it is, I actually really liked it down there. I enjoyed my time down there, and if I had to be in prison, I would want to be there. That was the resettlement wing. I had the opportunity to go straight. I had the opportunity to turn my life around, and I took half the opportunity, but I was institutionalized. I saw everything through the eyes of a crook, and I would basically just manipulate the situation into my favour every time. And as I've talked about in other videos, my need for instant gratification just outshone everything else. There was no long plans made. I was never going to behave to reap the rewards later. I was always going to misbehave and get my benefits now. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. I know this has been a long one, but I just wanted to talk about my time a little bit more in detail. There's loads more stories that I've missed off. There's still tons of things. I mean, there was a lad on the wing down there who used to deal heroin in my town, and he bumped into my brother. Now my brother's a psychopath who hates heroin, and he's an enforcer sort of around my town. So as soon as this lad started dealing heroin in my town, then my brother quickly came knocking on the door. This lad hid upstairs while the two other lads downstairs tried to take him on. One of them came out with a hammer and swung it at my brother. My brother put up his left arm and kind of blocked it, but it broke his arm. The lad kind of took a step back, a little bit surprised, and in that moment my brother grabbed the hammer out of his hand and just kind of said to him, "Do you know how much trouble you're in now?" This lad really did understand how much trouble he was in. My brother's a lunatic, and he jumped out of the upstairs window and broke all his hip and bones and things. But he would much rather do that than try and face my brother with a hammer. But I ended up on the same wing as the lad who was dealing heroin, and he said that he would have offered my brother good money to be able to keep selling and things. But like I say, my brother hates the stuff and was never going to let that happen. So yeah, these were constant sort of little stories, and my brother's reputation always helped me in prison, but it was always my own 2 feet that I had to stand on. I was asked before in one of the comments. It says, he said that it sounds like I was the daddy on the wing. Now, I've never once said I was the daddy on any wing ever. I don't think that I ever was. But once, when I first went down to the resettlement wing, there was a bunch of Bristol lads down there who were they weren't sort of running things, but they were they were getting weed in onto the wing. They were smoking and they were doing a bit of this and that, and they were the mob that were kind of doing shady shit. But they all ended up kind of getting shipped out, getting kicked off the wing, finishing their sentences, that sort of thing. And then after that, there wasn't anybody on the wing who was kind of running stuff. But the little gang of crazy fucking, the little gang of crazy Cornish people that we were, no one was above us and no one was stopping us. So yeah, maybe as a collective we were running the wing, but I don't think there was any one of us that ever thought individually we were the daddy. But as a collective we were definitely untouchable. So yeah, I've got some fond memories, and thank you very much for listening this long. Thank you very much for everyone's like and support. The guy who influenced me to do this video, he is the one who escaped from prison. So if you want me to maybe have an interview with him, have a chat with him about escaping from prison, then by all means try and convince him in the comments to do that. I haven't spoke to him yet, but if everyone puts in the comments that they want to hear that interview, then by all means say so, and we'll make that happen. But thank you very much for listening. Like, subscribe, do all that other YouTube stuff, and we'll keep making these as long as people want to keep listening. Thank you very much. Cheers then. Bye bye.